what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and without further delay, I got to bring in the hardest working man in show business. I got to bring in my colleague, Larry.
Man, you're watching too much YouTube.
How's it going today, Larry?
Yeah, I should have warned you. Bring your sunglasses, man. I got the rocking the orange shirt.
Larry, I want to start off. I want to talk to you and what is going before we talk about the breakdown of Russia, Ukraine. What is Trump's agenda with Maduro and Venezuela? Because it's costing tens of millions and even billions of dollars to deploy a carrier group down there and to keep these people on standby and then to steal oil tankers and say they're going to seize them, which is an act of war. What's going on with Mr. MAGA?
Hey, I don't think he knows. I don't think he's got a very well-defined objective. Is it removal of Maduro? Okay, you remove Maduro, then what? Maria Conchada, Consuela, Esperanza, this chick that's come out of nowhere to become the next great Latina hope. She's got no authority. She's not really a popular figure in Venezuela, and forcibly removing Maduro certainly will set off an insurgency, a guerrilla war that Ukraine will be hard pressed to win. And because there are a number in the Venezuelan military that will go out into the jungle and fight, and that means the U.S. is going to have to send troops in to assist. Boy, that there's a tar pit, Brer Rabbit get tossed into the briar patch. That's what's going on here. So if the goal is not to replace Maduro, is it to get control of natural resources? Well, sort of, I guess, if that was the objective, you could do that without having to go to war. Maduro is apparently willing to make such a deal. And this is the problem. The administration has done such a damn poor job of defining what it is that, what's its objective, what it's trying to accomplish. Stop the scourge of drugs. Is that why Trump released this major drug trafficker who used to be the president of Honduras? So, just lots of inconsistencies here.
Do you think that he's in control of the policy, or he is just a person on the bus, riding on the bus of the policy that is being determined by other people?
I think he's probably more the passenger than the driver. He's not the conductor; he's the passenger. Does what he's told when he's told to do so. But even whoever's driving the bus, again, they haven't figured out what they're trying to do. Militarily, there's not a quick, easy solution for the United States. If we decide to try to impose a military solution to Venezuela, it's going to be very costly to us, and it may not succeed. And so then what do we do?
I don't think that they've thought any of these things through. I think desperation is setting in with the rise of BRICS and the alternative global South bloc going, and I think the United States is well, not the United States, but those in power have had it their way so long that they can't fathom a world that does not dance to the tune of empire. What do you say about that, Larry?
Well, yeah. Look, when you create a construct, or maybe it's like looking at the world through a straw, and when you look through the straw, you see only a little narrow portion of it, and what you may be looking at may actually mislead you. Whereas if you're looking at something that provides the entire horizon, then all of a sudden you can see more clearly what it is that you're actually up against. And I think the United States has gotten so accustomed to looking through the straw that all we see is that we're the best, we're the richest, no nation's better than us. And it's no longer the case. It's not true. In fact, China has surpassed us on so many different counts that we're falling behind rapidly without realizing it. So this is, the U.S. failure to adjust to the changes leads it to continue to apply policies and decisions that may have worked 30 years ago, but they're no longer relevant. They no longer work.
But do you think that there are any adults in Washington? Because it seems to me that if policy after policy continues to fail and continues to cause a decline in the American Republic and the American empire, it would behoove them to think about not antagonizing China, not antagonizing Russia, not antagonizing African states, Latin American states, Middle Eastern states, European states, because these are the very nations that you need to cushion you when you fall. So do you think common sense, do they have any common sense? This is what I'm saying, because it seems like they're just throwing things up against the wall just to see if it'll stick.
Yeah, obviously, you never lived in Washington, D.C., okay? Dude, that's your problem, man. You're thinking this is a rational world. No, it's who was it that sang the song "Don't Rock the Boat, Baby"? Was that Hamilton, Joe, or who was that?
Push the boat over. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's what's going on in Washington. Don't rock the boat, baby. Keep the money flowing. Keep it flowing. It is. There is not a lot of common sense thought behind it, and I've seen this. I have seen it directly and indirectly over and over. Example: the first or the second Gulf War, 2003, when we attacked Iraq. You'd think, the rational, logical process is we've planned out in advance what we're going to do with the Ba'athist Party. We planned in advance what we're going to do with the Iraqi army. We know who we're going to put in charge of ruling the country. We're going to have a government, all this planning. There wasn't any damn planning. Or the ones who had tried to do planning were fired from the job and replaced by Paul Bremer, Jerry Bremer. And Bremer was arrogant. Nobody could tell him anything, man. He knew it all. And boy, he proceeded to cock things up. And they thought it was a good idea. Yeah, let's stop paying all these Ba'athist soldiers. Send them home. Do we have to collect their guns? Now let them keep the guns. Okay. And then all of a sudden, you got all these terrorist attacks or these attacks against U.S. military personnel. I don't consider that terrorism because they're military. They're not civilian. And it turns out the people carrying out the attacks, most of them were getting paid to do so. Hey, got to feed the family, got to do something. It beats having to become a male prostitute.
Well, let's pivot to Europe. I know the time is short and stuff, but let's pivot to Europe, Larry.
Yeah.
We see Europe in utter and total chaos and decline, and it seems like they continue to make it worse. I think they're now trying to put in a 20th sanctions package, even though the first 19 only did harm to Europe and not Russia. what is the old saying? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is the definition of insanity.
Yeah,
Aren't
yeah,
these people insane?
yeah. It sure looks like it. I mean, it's pretty bad when Scott Besson even comes out and criticizes you for sanctions. I mean, he's a big sanction guy, but even when he concedes that they haven't worked against Russia, and there's no magic bullet out there. 19 down, 20 to go. You got to step back and ask yourself, what is it that anybody needs from Europe? It's not like they got some natural resource that the world needs. It's not like they're the center of science and technology, as they once were. In the 19th century, you could make the case that Europe was the center of scientific investigation and developments, with America coming in as sort of a close second. But that's no longer the case. You've said, hey, what do I need from Europe? Would I like some good champagne or some great French wine? Sure. How about some pâté? Yeah, that's good. Clog up those arteries. Some good cheeses. But, those are all nice to have. You don't need them, just nice to have. So Europe is no longer relevant to the modern world. And yet all of this is a desperate attempt by itself to stay relevant. See, I'm important. They've become like Fredo and the Godfather. I'm smart. I want to do it on my own. That's Europe now. They're not. They went from being Michael Corleone to Fredo.
That's cold there, Larry. Yeah. That's a cold analysis there.
Cold but true, brother.
So how are they planning on keeping this war going in Ukraine? They are dead broke. They are still importing Russian oil, Russian gas, Russian fertilizer, Russian products. They're antagonizing China, and also the United States says, "Hey, depend on us. We'll sell you the liquefied gas," and then they shoot up the prices after they've antagonized Russia. How is all of this stuff working out for Europe, and will we see a continental war soon if they continue to push the envelope?
There you go again, thinking rationally, thinking that they've actually planned this out, and that's what's so shocking. They haven't. I'd mentioned earlier the lack of planning that went into the first Gulf War. Look, the same thing. There was an attempt in 2007 at the CIA to launch an attempt to overthrow the government of Iran, and as the planning for it started, someone I know who was directly involved in the planning asked the question, so we get rid of the Ayatollah, then what? And the answer that came back was, don't worry about it. It'll take care of itself. That goes back to using about throwing Jell-O at the wall, seeing what sticks. And so that happens over and over. I guarantee it happened with this whole decision to provoke Russia into a war with Ukraine. And, Russia did some planning for that. I mean, their plan was to put enough military pressure on Ukraine that they'd get them to peace talks, which happened. They succeeded in that. But then Russia didn't have initially a good plan B to fall back on. Mm-hmm. Well, now they do. They're either going to get a negotiated settlement on Russia's terms, or they're going to, win it militarily. And what is Europe going to do? Again, what does Europe have? Germany, we're going to arm ourselves. We're going to go to war with Russia in 3 years. Oh, Mr. Mertz, we just closed the Volkswagen plant. So if you're planning on using that to build some armaments, forget about it. Close down. They're paying more for energy because they've rejected the inexpensive imports from Russia. Their debt for all of these countries is growing at an astronomical rate. So they don't have a sound economic foundation. And the Germany talks about going to war. Well, look at the last time that Germany really went to war under Adolf Hitler. Well, he started building up the military, building new tanks, building new planes, building new ships, building new armored personnel carriers, building rifles, building machine guns. And that was well underway in like 1932, 33, and intensified in 34, 35, 36. He had about 6-7 years to build up forces before they were ready to launch. What are these guys doing? They're losing factories. Factories are closing down and moving overseas. Mm-hmm. So it just, I separate the rhetoric, the tough talk from what they can actually do. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure you knew somebody when you're going through like elementary school, middle school, who's always bragging about what they could do. And yet, they couldn't pour piss out of a boot if you wrote the instructions on the heel of the boot. Mm-hmm. Instead of turning over, they'd be going, huh.
Well, Larry, like when it comes to Russia, let's go back for a second. Let's go back to 2014. Mm-hmm. Could it be that Russia anticipated a lot of what the U.S. and NATO are trying right now to break the economy? That's why they agreed with the pauses. That's why they agreed to the negotiations, so that they can insulate their economy from an economic attack if the United States and NATO continue to push militarily in Ukraine?
Well, so go back to 2014. I think at the time Russia acknowledged that it was not strong enough economically or militarily to take on the West. And I think that was the initial wake-up call that, okay, we got to kick this into gear. We got to be prepared to defend ourselves. And that's what ensued in 2015, 2016. By 2021, I think there was growing concern that the West was building Ukraine up to launch a bigger offensive into the eastern half of Ukraine, into the Donbass. And Russia, by its launch of the special military operation on February 22nd, preempted that. So stopped it and turned it around. So this is the Russians have been, I don't think they've been necessarily caught by surprise. Mm-hmm. I think they've anticipated what the West would try to do, and then they've tried to put themselves in a position to fight back.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been to Russia several times, and you've gotten insider information. You've talked to a lot of people. What are they talking about, and what does it look like? Forget what the West is saying. What does it look like on the front lines right now, and what kind of trouble is Zelensky and the Ukrainian armed forces in?
Well, let's start with the last. Zelensky's days are numbered. The Ukrainian armed forces are losing a horrific number of personnel, as well as territory, and they're on their way to full military defeat. What's interesting in Russia right now is walking around the streets and talking to people, you wouldn't know there's a war on, because that's why they keep calling it a special military operation. It's not a war. It's not fully mobilized. It is. They've done partial mobilizations, and then they've got, the people are following the reports from the front, but there's no sense of desperation, panic, or pressure. The same can't be said for the Ukrainian side. I think there's an increased realization that they're losing, and losing badly, despite all the spend that's being put out, despite the denials, insistence. Oh no, we're not losing, we're winning. Those Russians are getting beat. Just because you say it doesn't make it true. All right. So if Russia was really at war, what the West needs to understand is they would fully mobilize. They would mobilize 5 million reservists. They would seize key portions of the economy and dedicate them strictly to supporting the military effort. That's what war would look like in Russia. Well, it doesn't look anything like that at all. It is, you can argue this, maybe that's one of the downsides because it's treated as a special military operation. It's not dominating the news or dominating the thinking of everybody. And Russians go on about their lives as sort of normal.
And a few days ago, the war secretary or the secretary general of NATO said, or one of the top generals stated that NATO need to contemplate a preemptive strike on Russia.
Yeah.
And Vladimir Putin responded, not directly to him, but responded in a way to Europe, saying that if they want war, they have to remember that what Russia is doing in Ukraine is a special military operation. Russia is very careful in what it's doing, but if Europe wanted war, then Russia would not hesitate to give it to them if they strike Russia. Do you think that they would take heed to this warning by the Russians? And I think Vladimir Putin was saying that, hey, we're not going to have gloves on if you continue to poke us. When we strike back,
Sure.
we're going to strike hard.
Yeah, no, they're not listening. They've been lied to so much about what they think is going on in Ukraine. They've convinced themselves that Russia's weak, that Russia's poorly led, poorly equipped, Russia's economy is on the verge of collapse, and that all they got to do is just push a little harder and it'll implode like a house of cards going down in a hurricane. And the Russians have tried to disabuse them of these ideas, and we've seen clearly the performance on the battlefield, if looked at objectively, shows it's not Ukraine that's advancing every day and pushing the Russians back every day. It's just the opposite. In fact, that's been that way for 3 years. Once when the Russians got pushed back in September of 2022 because they didn't have enough troops. They hadn't mobilized people who had signed contracts with the army had already left. So they had a manpower shortage in 2022, which is why they had to abandon Kherson and Kharkiv. Not the case today. Just the opposite. They have rebuilt. They mobilized 320,000 in September of 2022, and they've had a steady influx of conscripts, 30 to 35,000 a month, as well as some contract soldiers, I think 10 to 15,000 a month signed up on the contract. So Russia's doing fine on the manpower front, and Ukraine no longer has an answer to it.
So how long do you think that it'll be before Russia takes the whole of Donbass? Because some people are saying that Ukraine still holds 10% or 20%.
Yeah.
And if Russia takes it, why would Russia? I'm contemplating this. Why would Russia leave Kiev, Kharkov, and Odessa, especially Odessa, because in the hands of Kiev and NATO? Why would they stop and negotiate and leave that port city when they see what is going on right there? And that's a Russian city and Russian area historically.
Well, if let's say they've got these peace talks underway right now. If Ukraine said, okay, here's the deal. We will recognize that Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson and Donetsk and Luhansk are permanently part of Russia. We no longer will have a claim on those. We agree that NATO will be out of the country by into next week, and that we'll have no further relationship with NATO. We will not participate in NATO exercises. 3, we're going to hold elections, but neo-Nazis will be banned from participating in those elections. And then last, we're going to limit the size of our armed force to X level. With that kind of deal, the Russians say, okay, we can live with that. We will not take Odessa back. We won't take Kiev. We won't take Mykolaiv. We'll leave those alone.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see Ukraine doing that or agreeing to that. So what's Russia going to do? Russia will continue to move to the west. It will continue to take territory in Poltava, Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk. They will finish taking and capturing Zaporizhia. And, I was reading something posted at the Gateway Pundit where they claimed, they're 90% agreement. And, it's just, the only thing that remains to be discussed is whether Ukraine will give up all of Donetsk. And I'm just like, the Russians ain't signing off on any of that. I'm like, stop blowing smoke up your ass, for God's sake. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Well, Larry, if Russia, even if Ukraine were to agree to all that, we know that the empire never stops. They only they rest,
Right.
recalibrate, and rearm. It would be almost a betrayal to the Russians that lost their lives in the war for them not to take Odessa, because this is the crown jewel of what NATO wants, so that they can turn the Black Sea into a NATO lake or whatever. So Russia would have to be insane to allow Odessa to stay in Ukraine's hand. I could see some agreement saying, well, we can leave it in your under Ukrainian territory, but we have security there, something of that sort. But to leave it in Ukraine's hand, that would be a slap in the face to the people that died in the special military operation, and the people who are waiting for liberation, and all those people who were burned in the buildings by the neo-Nazis in Odessa.
Yeah. Well, look, I think what the next step is, the Trump administration will announce they've got virtual agreement. Ukraine has agreed to the Trump plan. The problem is the Russians will not accept the Trump plan. And so then Trump will present it to them, they'll reject it, and then we'll be back to blaming the Russians for stopping the peace process. And the U.S. will continue to try to provide support, except, the investigation into the corruption on the Ukraine side, that's progressing. And regardless of what Washington does, the Russian military still has a big say in what's going on, and they're going to keep moving to the West. So,
well, in closing, Larry, do you think that Russia will take the Kiev region, Kharkov, Odessa, and do you think that they will move further west?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that they're going to go all the way to the Dnipro, the Dnieper River, and they'll halt there, or they'll cross to capture the rest of Zaporizhia, the rest of Kherson that's to the west on the West Bank, as well as Kiev. So I think they'll take all of that, and they'll take Odessa before this is over. When might that be? I would anticipate that all that would be settled within a year, tops.
And will Ukraine lose all utility to NATO after becoming a landlocked welfare state to Europe and the United States?
Yeah. They're no longer of any use. They will have lost sort of the cream of their manpower. So one of the key resources is having trained troops. They will have lost that.
Well, Larry, I told you I wouldn't keep you long today.
No, you're always very respectful of my time. I appreciate that, and I'm always happy to sit down with you, brother.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'll send you the video. Be safe, be blessed, and if you get some info, don't forget to hit me up, Larry.
Right. I'll do that. All right.
All right, my friend.
Keep on. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye. Everybody, listen, we'll be having a print stream sometime this week coming up for the patrons and the channel members. I also want to let you know that we're in pre-litigation with StreamYard because StreamYard has been milking my credit cards. And I'm talking about like charging me double and triple the amount of what it was supposed to be. So we may have to use another platform if we cannot come to some resolution on this situation right now. I just got a notice that some of it is coming to a resolution the way I like it. So I want to thank each and every one of you all for giving me your time. As I always say, time is the most precious commodity. It is an unrenewable resource. Once you've used it up, it's gone. So make sure wherever you spend your time, that's why they call it spending time, you get an equal or greater return for it. And we hope that when you listen to our program and you take part in this program, that you get an equal or greater return of information and education and enlightenment. On that note, I want to say to each and every one of you to do right by others, not because this is some kind of accolades or some kind of reward behind it, but do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty is watching you. As my late, great, beautiful, and awesome mother would always say, God sits high on the throne of power, but he looks low at the actions of man. I want you to know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, freedom, justice, and equality. Truth, freedom, justice, and equality. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that my God, the true and living God, has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true. But above all things, remember to stay righteous, because righteousness is the only thing that will get you out of what's coming down on this world. Hey, mama, look at me. Your baby boy still loves you more than life. Thank you all. We're out of here. Peace.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost.